today I want to talk about the anatomy of a knit stitch. So, as you can probably guess from the title of this channel, I am an engineer. And part of the reason I picked that profession and why I hope I'm good at it is that I have a very deep interest in how things work. So, with knitting, I went through the motions. I was taught this is what you do with your hands and it makes this. And I was fine with that for a very long time. But then I started thinking, how does this magic work? I know what I'm doing, but why is this creating what I want it to do? So that's what I want to cover today, is just a little bit of terminology, but also just kind of in the weeds, in the nitty gritty of what makes this magic happen.
At its most fundamental level, knitting is just the process of creating interlocking loops, essentially, to make your project. So the way that this actually works, the reason this works, I should say, is that all the loops have the same orientation. So when you're looking at either the right side, so the front side of your work, or even the wrong side, the back side of your work, the stitches have a very specific orientation. And that's going to be front right over the needle to back left. So that's on the wrong side. The same is going to be true on the right side. So what I mean is that, just looking at this first stitch here a little more thoroughly, the front part of our loop is on the right side of our stitch, and the back part of our loop on the opposite side of the needle from us is the left side. So front right, back left, and around the needle in the middle. So getting ready to knit, I want to keep that in mind, right? So I'm going to start continental. I'm a continental knitter, so I'll always favor using left-hand control of my yarn. So I've inserted my right-hand needle, and to get the yarn around, I'm going to go front right to back left. So it's going to be the same on both your right hand and left hand needle. You'll always see front right of the stitch towards you, back left away from you. So just keeping that going, right? You'll see front right over the top, back left. Front right, make my loop, back left, pull it through. So I always want to maintain that orientation. Switching briefly to English style, right hand control, it's going to be the same thing, right? Front right over the top, back left, pull through. As I mentioned before, this orientation of front right and back left is going to be maintained no matter which side of your work you are looking at, both right side and wrong side. So I'm just doing a basic stockinette stitch. I'm on the wrong side, which means I'm going to have to purl. So doing this continental again, I have to go front right over the top, back left, pull through. If you saw me demonstrate English style purling in my purling video, you'll know this is very difficult for me, but we'll go ahead and show this just for consistency. So same thing, I need to go front right to back left and pull through. Front right, back left. Oh no, so tricky for me. And pull through. Front right over the top, back left.
So for shiggles, I decided to go ahead and try deliberately knitting in a new orientation. So instead of doing what we've been talking about, which is always maintaining that front right to back left, I am deliberately doing this with front left, back right. So I'm purling this row, and I'm going to go ahead and flip it around and start knitting again. Kind of the only thing I took away here, it was a little bit awkward to make my hands cooperate with what I was trying to do, since I'm so used to the general front right back left. So that was tricky. Also, it took some trial and error to realize that I had to both knit and purl through the back loop in order to make this work. But the reason I kind of did this experiment here is I wanted to kind of focus on the end product. So as long as I maintained consistency with this front left back right situation, it actually looks identical to regular stockinette stitch. And so if you didn't know that I had done this new orientation, you'd never be able to guess.
Something else I want to cover in this video is how to visually isolate an individual stitch. So just looking at your work right now, everything is very much identical, right? I have very uniform stitches, which is a good thing. So it can be a little bit tricky on how do you say this is one single stitch in my work. So I've made it easy for us. I've gone ahead and marked a single stitch with some black Sharpie. But really what you're looking for is either kind of a V or an arrow, if you will. So an individual stitch has, when you're looking at the knit side, it has two parts. So it's got kind of a right leg and a left leg. And they kind of meet in the middle and separate away. They're canted a little bit away from each other. So that's what I mean. You're looking for a V. So the V is right side up. If you're kind of considering the top of your work, your live stitches where the needle is. But if it's easier for you to think about it kind of in this orientation, thinking about the edge of your work as the top of your work, then it'll make an arrow. So it's either an individual stitch is either pointing towards the end of your work or a V with the right side up orientation towards your needle. On the wrong side, it's a little bit trickier. The wrong side is a lot of horizontal bars. So you can isolate the top of an individual stitch. I don't recommend it, especially if you're just getting started. Just go ahead and stick with finding stitches on the right side, looking for that V. One final thing I want to cover today is the transition from a live stitch, so a loop on your needle, to a stitch in your work. So I've gone ahead and marked off a couple of my live stitches with black Sharpie because I want to show you what happens when you actually knit into your live stitch, when you knit into those loops on your needle. So let's go ahead and just knit directly across this row. And what I'm really showing you is that as you work, your live stitches, the loops on your needle, will not get translated directly into their own stitch in your work. There's going to be a little bit of shifting. So let's look at what I'm talking about. Here's the grand reveal. So you can kind of see already that those stitches that I marked, those loops that I marked, you're not seeing a lot of black in your work because some of that stitch is actually on the wrong side. So each individual loop turns into a bit of yarn on the wrong side and a bit of yarn on the right side. Again, this doesn't change anything about how you work your pattern. It really has no major effect. It's just something super interesting I've noticed. So like here on that first black stitch I knit into, only the right leg of my stitch has any color to it. And the left side was essentially taken from the adjacent live stitch, the adjacent loop on my needle. That's not always going to hold true. So these interim stitches, you can see there's a little bit of black on the right side, a little bit of black on the left side of this adjacent stitch. There's no hard and fast rule. Again, it's just something that I noticed. A live stitch will not immediately become a stitch in your work. There's going to be a little bit of sharing between these adjacent loops. And again, the reason that happens is because there's also yarn on the wrong side. So it's just not going to be a one-to-one like that.
And that's it. I hope you all found this video interesting. I don't know if everyone else is as concerned with demystifying the mechanics of knitting as I am, but if you are, there you go. See you all in the next video.